Well, I think you're stuck in the half measure based on your comment here. That's what I think about it. And I'm going to break it down to you. So please be patient. But I want this example to already be in your mind before I get there. You traded in lung cancer for obesity and heart disease. Now, before some smartass has something to say, you don't inhale cigars, and cigar smokers, purely just cigar smokers, they don't get lung cancer, all right? Cigarette smokers do. Now, if a person is trying to quit smoking cigarettes, oftentimes in that quitting, they will turn to food and they will begin to overeat because they constantly got to have something in their mouth, that feel of security and that habit of having something. And oftentimes they overeat. And when you overeat and you become obese, then you're in danger of heart disease. So you traded in one destructive force for another. And you're doing it in a half measure. And I want you to have that in your mind. Because what you've done is realize that there is absolutely something wrong with religion, something wrong with the teachings, the churches, the synagogue, something wrong with the book. The Old Testament has so many flaws that you just can't help yourself. And I guarantee if Jesus did not say that the greatest commandment is to love the Father is to love the Father, and that in another portion, if he hadn't said that you are to keep the commandments, you would have probably dropped that part too and only just say you follow the teachings of Jesus and you believe the teachings of Jesus will get you in. Here's the truth of it. You cannot follow this God. You cannot believe in Jesus as a Messiah. And you say you don't believe in Jesus as being God. And I understand that. You got another half measure out the door. All right. But if you believe in the teachings of Jesus, which Jesus was a Jewish man who believed in the teachings of the Torah, just believed that some of the Pharisees and Sadducees had misinterpreted and they were abusing the situation, then you believe in the Old Testament God, and it's all based on the Torah and the New Testament, i.e. the Bible, then you believe in the religion, and therefore you are religious. There is no escaping it. Many people may come on here and say, no, I don't believe, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. There is actually no true differentiator other than the one that you create in your mind. You cannot claim to be spiritual based on the Bible and not be a part of the religion of the Bible. The religion is the binding that you have to this line of thinking, to these rituals, to this entire concept of deity. So there is no escaping of it other than the complete and utter walking away from it. You cannot take Jesus and say that I'm just going to follow Jesus' teachings. If you're going to do that, then Jesus had no problems with slaves. Even if you separate Jesus from being God and say it in that way, you don't have to accept that Jesus, if he was God all the time, then Jesus was the God of the Old Testament as well. But when you just purely look at the New Testament, Jesus was accepting of slavery. Jesus was accepting of the servitude of women. Jesus was accepting of the culture of the Greco-Roman era, which allowed for all these things that today we would say are immoral. The teachings of Jesus are still less moral than the teachings that we have today. People like to point to a few little stories. When they brought the adulterous woman to Jesus, which we know that story was later added to the Bible. It wasn't in the original text. That he drew the line in the sand and said, let he without sin cast the first stone. And then told the woman to go and sin no more. We know in today's morality, we would say that, why are you just simply blaming the woman? Where is the man? She cannot have committed adultery on her own. You cannot take all the blame and put it on a woman and make it seem like the woman is at fault. The woman is the one that is the only one at fault, and that there is no male who is at fault. The male is not present. Neither does Jesus ask about the male. Jesus doesn't speak out on slavery in a negative format to say that no man should be owned by another man. He goes with the flow of his culture. No change. Jesus didn't come up and say that why is it that women should be able to gain inheritances. But at the time frame, if you weren't elite, and even at some of the elite levels in the Roman Empire, women still didn't have the rights of inheritance. Jesus never spoke about that. He never brought that type of mindset down. He didn't speak about you raising your consciousness. He didn't tell people to speak about not going to war and things of that nature. He was a product of his time, a product of his environment. He was more conscious than the old people, but he was still within his time frame, within his environment, much the same way that I am now. I'm sure that there are esoterical thoughts that will be higher elevated than my own at some point, because more information and more knowledge and more experiences will have happened culturally that will lift that intelligence. If the age of Aquarius is true, it most certainly will be at some point. Definitely. And the last part, when you say that there were books were taken out and books added to the Bible, there's a flaw with that. The flaw is that the Torah, the Old Testament, wasn't canonized, wasn't closed, I believe, until the second, third, or fourth century. So there was no Bible. The canonization of the Bible, of the current Bible, didn't happen until about around 380, 365, somewhere around in there. And even then they were still changes that were made, doctrines that were added. So we still didn't truly get a canonized Bible probably until about 1100. So to say books like Enoch taken out, well, there was no Bible for it to be taken out. It was popularly read by multiple people. Different people chose in different areas what books that were more favorable to them and which ones weren't. And because people thought that way, it took what became the Catholic Church hundreds of years to stamp everything out and come to their own conclusion of what the Bible is and canonize it. Now, once it was canonized, those were the books that were acceptable. So the book of Jasher was not acceptable. The book of Enoch was not acceptable. The Gospel of Thomas was not acceptable. But those books were also never part of the Bible as well. So we just need to understand it in its totality, not so much in the more popular rhetoric that is used today. But I hope that answers your question. And basically, you got to pick a side. You can't have your left foot in and your right foot out. You got to pick a side. Either be all Christian or don't be. It's as simple as that. But whatever path you follow, make sure it's the path for you, not because of any pressure from anybody else. Your path just for you. And you know what? If what you choose right now is your path, although I disagree with it, it is your path, sir. So you have a great day. And always remember that you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibration.